What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at Swordfish, starring Hugh Jackman, John Travolta, and Halle Berry. Swordfish tells the story of this computer hacker named Stanley Jobson, who is recruited by a man named Gabriel to pretty much for his hacking skills, so that way he can commit a number of robberies. That's the overall baseline of the movie. Let's talk about it. Overall, I think Swordfish is a decent action flick from 2001. I vaguely remember this movie. I think I saw it maybe one time, and it didn't really leave much of an impression on me. But the one thing that I did like about this movie was its soundtrack, because I remember going out of my way to buy the album for this movie, and I thought the soundtrack was good. Now, of course, as I got older and my skills started to sharpen, I pretty much grew to pretty much view Swordfish as a more or less rip-off of The Matrix. Now, it's not a beat-for-beat rip-off of The Matrix, but it does take a lot of cues from The Matrix, and a lot of characters are pretty much modeled off of characters in The Matrix. Like, for example, Hugh Jackman's character of Stanley Jobson. He's a computer hacker. Keanu Reeves, Neo, he is a computer hacker. He has a more or less a mentor in John Travolta's character of Gabriel. Gabriel more or less is a a bad guy version of Morpheus, somebody who spews out a lot of who spews out a lot of metaphors, does a lot of these soliloquies and things of that nature. Like he's not a character. He's more or less a metaphorical spewing guy who just says these things to make himself sound smarter. And actually, that's what Swordfish is. Swordfish is a movie that thinks it's clever and that thinks it's smart, but it's really not. It's really just a paint-by-numbers action movie with just some spruced up, with just some reworked dialogue from The Matrix, just to make it seem like it's saying something profound and saying something important when it's really not. But just as an overall action movie, I think it's decent. Like, it's fun it's fun in some areas. It's not really all that memorable. And it's not to say that the action sequences are bad. They're just, they're paint by numbers. They don't have the visual flair of The Matrix, though there are a lot of visual cues that are directly lifted from The Matrix. Especially there is some use of slow motion and bullet time in this movie, which is completely straight from The Matrix. Again, in The Matrix, it was actually done in a very creative way. In Swordfish, you can clearly tell that it's directly ripping off a lot of those visual cues. This movie's story, it's basically a fish out of water story. This guy named Stanley Jobson, he's a former criminal who is trying to get his life together so that way he can have access to his daughter, who is being kept from him by his wife, who pretty much has him blacklisted. So this very attractive woman named Ginger, played by Halle Berry, and by God, Halle Berry in this movie, woof. If I have anything positive to say about this movie, Halle Berry, you turned an 11-year-old me into a man when I first saw this movie, because the only thing I can remember from this movie is just how drop-dead gorgeous Halle Berry was. Can't get no better than 2001 Halle Berry, damn. Anyway, so yeah, this Ginger girl recruits Stanley to meet Gabriel, who is like who's more or less like this criminal. And they work together to pretty much try and hack into computers so that way Gabriel can commit his robberies. And this is all done with the promise of allowing Stanley to pretty much gain full custody of his daughter. So yeah, that's basically it. And everything else that surrounds this movie is all whatever. Like, you have this subplot of an FBI agent played by Don Cheadle trying to figure out how Stanley and Gabriel, are connected to one another. That subplot is what it is. And there's also the connection that that Cheadle's character has to Hugh Jackman's character, since it was actually Cheadle's character who put the character of Stanley in prison prior to the events of the movie. So they have like a little connection. They got like a little story going on to themselves as well, in which the Don Cheadle character also gives Stanley the promise of helping him to get his daughter back. So you have that. You got John Travolta's character as the leader Gabriel, and I'll say this: John Travolta, the performances in this movie, they're not bad. They're not great, but they're not bad. And I'll say this: John Travolta does a good imitation of Lawrence Fishburne's Morpheus by trying to make him sound more clever than he actually is. and he gives a lot of speeches where he's like comparing certain things to movies. Like he has this really long soliloquy where he's comparing a hostage situation to Al Pacino's Dog Day Afternoon, and then in another scene he's giving Stanley a speech about Harry Houdini and the whole thing of misdirection, which actually plays into the end of the movie and to Gabriel's character, because at the end of the movie, once the big climax is all said and done, it's revealed that the Gabriel character and the Ginger character are dead. But since it was set up earlier with the whole concept of misdirection, it's revealed that they are very much still alive. But they're not going to be hunting down Stanley. They're going to be hunting down terrorists. Basically, the character of Gabriel, his whole thing is that he's stealing in order to keep America safe, or some nonsensical rubbish like that. Like his motivations and what he wants to do, it's very just confused in a way, because he's doing all this just to like stop terrorism, sort of. And at the end of the day, so okay, so you have a bad guy killing other bad guys. I guess it's trying to. I guess with that notion, it's all about the gray area, so to speak. I mean, you have this movie set up a subplot of Ginger pretending to be a DEA agent when she's really not. Like this whole movie is one big giant misdirection, and it can be confusing because it tries to like throw twist after twist after twist at you, and you kind of left scratching your head with like, what is with all these twists? Like this is like amateur writing. Like an amateur writer would throw in twists in a movie because they don't know how to tie everything all together. And listen, no disrespect to Skip Woods, who wrote this movie, but I've seen enough of his movies to tell you that the man is not that great of a writer. Like this is the same guy who wrote X-Men Origins Wolverine, and that movie was trash. This is also the same guy who gave us A Good Day to Die Hard. That was another trash movie. I guess it's safe to say that Skip Woods is a trash screenwriter. But if I had to compare the three movies, I think Swordfish, just by default, is the better written movie. And that's not really saying much when you compare it to what came after it. But again, in terms of performance-wise, I got nothing against the actors. They're all pretty much doing what they can with the material that they're given. They're not putting in like these groundbreaking performances, but they're putting in performances that are adequate for a movie like this. Dominic Sena's direction is okay. I'll say this, the movie does have really good cinematography. I like the cinematography and the overall look of this movie. It's very polished. It has that early 2000s feel to it. And I ain't gonna lie, I like the action movies from the 90s going into the early 2000s. They have a distinct look to them, where they weren't about spewing messages and trying to be socially relevant or anything like that. They're just these mindless action flicks that think that they have a brain, but they really don't. They have a synthetic brain and an actual brain. And that's the best description I can give Swordfish. But this movie does have a couple of scenes that I did like. Like I do like the scene of Stanley reuniting with his daughter when he picks her from school. That's a nice tender moment, and you really get the sense that this man truly loves his kid and will pretty much get his hands dirty if it means getting his child back, even if he doesn't want to do it. So I get in that instance, the character of Stanley, even though he's not the most virtuous character, he does have a sense of likability to him, and you are rooting for him to, try and get out of this predicament and be reunited with his kid. So in that aspect, I don't have anything all that bad to say. That is what it is. That's not too bad. And John Travolta, even though I think he's a villainous version of Morpheus, he is a lot of fun to see on screen, and he and Jackman do have some entertaining scenes together. And I ain't gonna lie if I said that I didn't really enjoy the scene of Gabriel killing a bunch of people in the street with a gun. And I do think some of his speeches are actually pretty well acted for the most part. But even though I think the movie is just spewing out what it's going to do without cleverly hiding it. It's kind of showing its hand at the same time by having the character of Gabriel give these speeches every 5 seconds. So yeah, like overall, Swordfish is a decent movie. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. It's fine. It is what it is. I give it a solid 5 out of 10. It's a middle of the road action flick. It's not bad, but it's not great either. It's a nice hour. It's a good 90-minute watch. that you kill time, you'll be entertained by it, it does what it needs to do, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and that's the best that I can say about Swordfish. It's a good 5 out of 10 action flick. It's decent. It's watchable, but once you watch it, there's no need to watch it again. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Swordfish. Let me know your thoughts in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.